Shalom everyone, welcome back. This week we're learning Parsha's Vayakhel, and this week we're going to discuss how we are actually going to do it. This time we're going to build the Mishkan. All the things we learned about in the past, how they were supposed to do it, now they're actually doing it. They're going to build the Mishkan. And the one overseeing this task, his name is Bezalel. He's a youngster, 13, 14-year-old boy. And so Moshe comes to the Jewish people and says, do you approve? Look, I'll show you. God appointed Bezalel. And from here we learn a custom. Whenever we come to bench or to make a blessing in the name of other people, so even though it could be your house, you're hosting other people, you ask them permission before you make the blessing on their behalf. You would say, why do I need their permission in my house? It's an idea of humility. Just like Moshe, before he appointed Bezalel, technically Bezalel was sent by God to oversee the building of the Mishkan, but Moshe still asked the people. He asked them, is it okay with you that Bezalel should be the one in charge of building the Mishkan? Now, Bezalel had a special lineage. His grandfather was Hur. Hur was the one left in command, together with Aaron, when Moshe ascended to Mount Sinai. When Moshe went up Har Sinai, he left behind Hur, who was actually his nephew, the son of Miriam, and Aaron, and they were in charge of the Jewish people. When the Jewish people chose to do the Egel, the golden calf, so they murdered Hur. He stood up and said, what are you doing? And they killed him. And after they killed him, they went on to do the golden calf. So it's his grandson, Bezalel, who is going to oversee the building of the Mishkan, which is really the Jewish people's atonement for the Egel. And when we bear that in mind, we notice some very interesting things. Not only is Bezalel, the grandson of Hur, the one in charge of building the Mishkan, but if you recall, when the Jewish people did the golden calf, when they did the Egel, so the men were sent to go and get the jewelry from their wives, and the women said, no way, I'm not giving my jewelry for a golden calf. What happens in our Parsha? Vayakhel hanashim al hanashim. The women were first to come and bring their donations. They said to their husbands, you guys come along. I want you to be with me when I donate my jewelry in honor of the Mishkan. So the women, when it was a worthwhile cause, when it was in the name of Hashem, they led the charge. They came and said, we want to donate our jewelry for the Mishkan. The Jewish people were so excited over this idea that they could build the house of Hashem that within a day, they had donated more gold and silver and all the different cloths that were necessary, more than could be used. It was so beautiful that the Nesiim initially had said, we, the princes, we're the leaders of the Jewish people. Moshe, whatever you're missing, come to us. We'll fill in the gaps. And suddenly they found themselves where there was nothing missing. There was nothing left for them to bring. Vanisim heviu. So the pasuk tells us, you know what they were able to bring? At the very end, there was almost nothing missing. They said, oh, wait a second. We'll give those precious stones at Tavnei Hasham, at Tavnei HaMiluim, La'ifod V'Lachoshen. They brought the precious stones for the ephod and choshen, but they really lost out. They lost on their opportunity. And from here we learn an important lesson. When there's a mitzvah, a person should rush to be the first to do the mitzvah. The Nesiim made a mistake when they said, whatever's missing, come to us. So our Parsha tells us about how we built the Mishkan, and the Parsha begins with a commandment, keep Shabbos. And from here we learn that all the actions that were done in the Mishkan, all the important actions, which were 39 important tasks, those are the actions that are forbidden to do on Shabbos. And there's one I want to just mention, which I think is very interesting. When they set up the beams, the atzei shitim omdim, the beams that would actually make the walls around the Mishkan, so every beam would have two letters denoting who it matched to. You'd have, let's say, Aleph Aleph on one beam, and the next beam would have Aleph Beis, so you could know that they match. And the first idea we learn from here is that if a beam was situated in a specific place in the service of Hashem, it stayed there for the rest of that beam's life. So we think sometimes I have a specific task in the service of Hashem. Chazal teach us that also inanimate objects have specific tasks in the service of Hashem, and that's why beams were situated in specific places and they wouldn't shift. If your position was northeast, you stayed northeast. You couldn't shift because that's your job, to be the beam in the northeast. And every person, just like every object, has a specific task in this world. But there's another interesting concept here. We learn the task of writing and the task of erasing from the fact that they wrote on the beams these letters. And this teaches us an interesting idea. The fact that they wrote 2 letters to denote the position of a beam, okay, I understand that. But the fact that every so often they'd make a mistake and they'd have to erase and rewrite the 2 letters, that teaches us there's a malacha, a prohibited task on Shabbos called erasing. Now, if you would have asked me, I would have said, if I'm busy doing the job of Hashem, building Hashem's Mishkan, I certainly shouldn't make mistakes like that. And yet our sages say there's no reasonable way to expect that someone's going to write 2 letters on every beam and they won't make a mistake. They made mistakes, and they erased those mistakes, and they fixed them. And that's part of how you build a Mishkan. Sometimes we think that if I'm doing the will of Hashem, I'm doing what Hashem wants, everything should work out right. And here in the building of the Mishkan, we're taught that working out right includes making mistakes. That's called the worked out right. Shabbat Shalom.